You're listening to the LA Football Podcast.
Hey, what's going on, Los Angeles? Welcome to the LA Football Show here on the LA Football Network. And we are excited to talk with you today about some fun LA football topics. We are in the dead of the offseason for both pro and college. OTAs did get going for the pros, but we're going to, we'll let those wrap up and maybe get into some takeaways from that next week. This week, we're going to do something a little different for our pro teams, and we got some fun stuff for our college teams. This is going to be your Rams edition of the show, so talking all things Ramley with you guys, and excited to get into it. Joining me as always, the Madman, Jamal. What's up, brother? How we doing?
Doing well, right? Great to see you as always, and excited to jump into some really creative topics. It's always fun in this sort of dead period to come up with innovative ways of tying information and analysis together. So in many ways, it's the off season for the actual game. But for us, it's almost kind of like the Super Bowl in terms of coming up with clever and creative topics. So excited to really have a great discussion.
Yeah, exactly. Like we could talk OTAs, and we will eventually, but like every podcast out there is talking OTAs, and not that any of those podcasts are even at OTAs, but they're basically taking what the beat writer is saying and then just regurgitating it. So why not do something different? And in honor of the NBA playoffs, in honor of my Denver Nuggets making their first ever NBA Finals appearance, where they will play either, the Miami Heat or the Boston Celtics, looking like the Heat, but the Celtics did extend the series at the time of this recording. So in honor of that, we're going to look at, and again, this is Rams, and we'll get to the Chargers on another episode, look at the top 5 players on the Rams and how they compare, or what players in the NBA they compare to. So Jamal, the NBA better than me. I have no problem admitting that. So we'll see if my list is laughable. I'll try my best to make it make sense, but I think it'll be a fun discussion. Would love to get everyone out there listening, all your Rams fans, get your thoughts, who you think these players compare to, and let's just, have some fun with it and enjoy the offseason until live football is truly back. Show is always brought to you by our friends at BetOnline. Head to betonline.ag today. Use our promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV. Gets you a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Still plenty to bet on. Like we said, the NBA Finals, the NHL Finals will be coming up. Stanley Cup Finals, I should say. You've got international soccer. MLS is back. WNBA. There's plenty of things. Baseball to bet on, and do it all at betonline.ag. Once again, that promo code is BELIEVE. That's BLEAV. Tell them the guys at the LA Football Network sent you. So, Jamal, should we say our full, not our comparison list, but which 5 Rams players, or should we just go one by one and keep it a surprise?
Let's keep it a surprise. Let's go one by one. I love that. Okay.
So, starting Matthew Stafford. Obviously, everyone knows the big 3 are going to be on this list, but the last 2 may be surprising to people. But obviously, Matthew Stafford's got to be on this. Coming back from injury, looking fresh. He's at OTAs, which was fully expected, but it's always good when you get your starting quarterback at the optional organized team activities, even though nowadays they're not as optional as they used to be. But he's out there looking good. So I'll let you start. Which NBA player is most comparable to one Matthew Stafford?
Yeah, Ryan, this was an interesting one. There isn't quite the cleanest of comps here in Stafford's case, but when you look at his career holistically, and you look at the years in Detroit and now with the Rams, his years in Detroit were really sort of emblematic of a guy who just was stat stuffing and had huge numbers, but couldn't quite, get over kind of the playoff hurdle and have the playoff success. Obviously, that changed with the Ram run 2 years ago now and winning the Super Bowl. But, the question of how vital he was to that role, sometimes there is debate there. So I think had Stafford not won a Super Bowl, I think this comp would be really clean. But the fact that he's won a Super Bowl, I think muddies the waters a bit. But I think in totality, when you sort of look at his career, I think of Stafford as James Harden. And when you think of James Harden, of just all the success that he has had, MVP, 3-time scoring champ, just 30 plus points a game, 3 years, just the stat stuffer that he's been over the years. with Houston, but Houston has sort of struggled in terms of getting over the hump. Now James Harden kind of goes to Philly. They almost sort of got there, not quite, and we'll see kind of how it all shakes out. Stafford, to me, his career is very similar in that regard. The big numbers, maybe not quite those sort of playoff performances up until 2 years ago. So to me, Stafford is sort of James Harden with the ring. If the Sixers won the ring this year, or if Harden is fortunate enough to get a ring in the next year or two or three, to me, James Harden and Matthew Stafford are kindred spirits here between NBA and NFL.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I took a very similar approach in that regard of kind of looking at their career in totality, and I agree there's not like a true clean, in my opinion. No, anyone out there, let us know. Hit us up on Twitter at LAFB Jams, at Ryan Dyer at LAFB, or you can text RamsHouse to 31032. I didn't think there was a clean one either, but when looking at kind of what Stafford meant to the city of Detroit, all they put in there, and the love he had for the city, the love he had for the fans had for him. But then it got to a time when everyone was like, all right, let's see him in a different spot. Whether it wasn't malicious, but it was just, hey, it's time. I think that Detroit needs to move on and go a different direction. I think Stafford needs to move on. And we're kind of seeing that. We've seen it now for, I feel like, 3 years with one Damian Lillard over with the Portland Trail Blazers. And their careers, again, are not complete perfect synergy, but Dame's a guy who's uber talented. Obviously, he's carried that team on his back seemingly his whole career. They've had some nice playoff moments, which is where this comparison isn't as good because Stafford didn't really have those in Detroit, but has never been able to get over the hump. And these last 4 years, the conversation every offseason is he going to be traded? Should he ask for a trade? He's never actually asked for a trade, but he's kind of floated cryptic stuff around on social media. So in that regard, I saw the comparison, just two very talented players that maybe just couldn't get it done in their original spots. And we'll see if Dame ends up going somewhere else in his NBA career and then gets it done elsewhere or not, as we know Stafford did here in LA. So, I'm on the same path of you. We just chose a different player.
I love it. And I think that's a great comp. No question about it in terms of kind of the meaning to the city. And I think it's TBD, both in the case of Harden and Lillard, if they can kind of win elsewhere the way Stafford did. I think that really lines up very nicely. And I know, Ryan, we sort of limited this to current players, but while you were talking, the former player where I actually think the comp really lines up nicely is Kevin Garnett. Because when you think about what Garnett meant to Minnesota, his beloved soda, the way Stafford, the connection with Detroit, and the Garnett connection with Minnesota, I think are very similar. Big numbers, big accolades. And then Garnett goes to a big market, a big time franchise, wins in year one the title, and sort of is able to sort of round out and solidify his career in that way. So as a former player, I think the KG comp is a really strong one.
That's a perfect comp. I don't know if there is a more. I don't know if there is a more perfect one than that one. So and you could argue other players that have done that early, but then they've then gone and won more and gone elsewhere. So then that's where the comp kind of ends. So that KG one is perfect. So, okay. Next player here, Cooper Kupp. Got to talk Cooper Kupp, the forgotten one, if you will, in the NFL. Doesn't get the respect he deserves. I'm really curious to your comp here because this can go so many different ways. I don't think there's so many right answers, I think, for this one. So who you got for the great Cooper Kupp?
Ryan, when I think of Cooper Kupp, I think of a guy who, I think you've mentioned this really nicely, is two really key elements and ingredients. One is supreme skill. And when you think about Cooper Kupp, it's about craft. It's about nuance. It's about getting out of his breaks. It's about positioning, footwork, where his hands are, how he's able to find soft spots in the defense and get open. It's just a game of supreme skill. And then there's, I think, that other element where he's a little bit unappreciated because he's not catching 70-yard bombs or jumping over guys or trucking guys over, So I think there's kind of two elements there where sometimes he gets a little bit forgotten, but then you have to sort of remind folks with his great performances every now and then. And I actually think the comp here is Devin Booker. And, when you think about Book, you think about a guy's supreme skill. But when you're thinking about maybe the top players in the league, he doesn't always kind of come up right away. And, oftentimes he sort of gets overlooked for some other guys. But then when you look at the playoff run that he had, even though Phoenix fell short, 35 a game on nearly 60% shooting. I mean, that's the kind of triple crown stuff that Cooper Kupp was putting up in terms of kind of historic numbers. So for me, the current player comp is Devin Booker. And then I'll let you go. And I got kind of a historical one as well as we were talking. But to me, Book is kind of the guy I see when I think of Cooper Kupp.
Nice. That's a great comp. For me, very similar reasoning behind it, just very different player. And I'll try to explain it because it could be laughable. But when I look at the triple crown king, I compare him to the triple double king. And that's Nikola Jokic right now in the playoffs. A guy
wow.
I think, and here's a big reason why. I think true NBA fans and NBA diehards realize, and can say Nikola Jokic is, if not the best player, top 3 right now in the NBA. Like, there's no argument. But the casual fan still, maybe now in the playoffs, they're realizing it, but all season long, it's no, I don't know what you're talking about. He's too slow. He's too goofy looking. He doesn't look the part, yada, yada, yada. And Cooper Kupp, very similar thing. I mean, he puts the numbers up. Still, no, Tyreek Hill's better. No, Devontae Adams better. No, he just doesn't look the part. He's not fast enough. He's not strong enough. He's not big enough. But all he does is produce. All he does is put the numbers up when healthy. And so that, to me, is the perfect comp, because both of them are kind of they're these silent assassins that can't truly get the respect. But yet, when you look at the stat sheet, every single game, every single night, every single Sunday, they're at the top of the list every time. And I think now, finally, in these NBA playoffs, the mass media and the mass fanhood are seeing just how good Nikola Jokic is. And during the Rams' historic run in 2021, finally in that Super Bowl run, everyone saw, oh, wow, Cooper Kupp really is that good. And so to me, that's why those comps kind of make sense. Is just the underappreciatedness, the greatness, and then the acceptance of, okay, they really are that good. Now,
I love that.
Yeah.
And the story ties together so beautifully, and being underappreciated and then overcoming, winning the championship. I love that, Ryan. And I love how you sort of transcended their size, their position, to really look at the essence of it. For me, the historical player, for very similar reasons, Ryan, is Steve Nash.
Yes.
When you look at Nash having won 2 straight MVPs, but there was still question even in that period of whether he was the best player in the game or not. Obviously, supreme skill. He was a 50, 40, 90 guy, which in many ways is sort of the modern triple crown for wide receivers. And, that's such a difficult 3 thresholds to be able to reach. And so when you think of Nash just being able to orchestrate an offense, I think of Kupp in a very similar way, very decorated, yet not having quite gotten as much respect as they probably should have. So I think Book, Nash, Jokic, all very, very intriguing comps, and love all 3 of them.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, Steve Nash, great. All right, Aaron Donald. This is the one where if any of these players we have the same, this might be the one. Might be the only one, I think. Now, could be completely off. But I feel like this one might have some similarities, but I'll kick it over to you. Who's your comp for the great Aaron Donald?
Yeah, for me, in terms of when you think of Aaron Donald, you just think of an incredible specimen, someone who has got tremendous power, tremendous quickness, and is just sort of one of one as an athlete, someone that we just haven't seen before in terms of that form factor. And whether it's clogging up the run, whether it's getting to the quarterback, whether it's, you're always sort of worried about him and having to account for him, just given his physical dominance. For me, that version of Aaron Donald in the NBA is Giannis Antetokounmpo, and just how physically imposing Giannis is, obviously. And they both kind of have these defensive roots. I think Giannis really cut his teeth and made his chops first as this tremendous two-way player, and what he was able to do defensively in terms of controlling the game. And then as he grew into his body more, grew into his own more, expanded a little bit more of the skill set, he became this dominant two-way player. So for me, Donald and Giannis are kind of these 2 dominant forces given their physical prowess, and makes a lot of sense that they're connected.
Yep, it makes sense, and the physicality of it definitely ties in. And once again, I went very similar in terms of reasoning, but different path in terms of player. And I looked at the physicality of Donald I looked at the well-roundedness of his game, really can do everything when it comes to defense outside of, playing cornerback, but obviously it's a very different sport. And then I also looked at the GOAT conversation. And when you talk about the defensive GOAT, it's Aaron Donald or it's Lawrence Taylor. Some people will sprinkle in maybe Reggie White or whatnot, but it's kind of just depends what era you're from, right? And so my comparison was LeBron James. LeBron James, a player that can do it all, physical specimen, can play both ways, and obviously forever and ever and ever will always be in that GOAT conversation between him and MJ. Some people will sprinkle in Kobe, some Magic, but it's always in that realm. So when you look at two players that transcended their position, transcended one side of the ball, I think they're tied at the hip. Love they both are in LA. We talked offline how Donald was at the Laker game, sitting courtside, rocking his Rams hat, his Lakers uni. And so just when you look at pure dominance and size, and just every single year being in the conversation of all defensive player of the year, MVP of the year, to me, the synergy is right there.
Yeah, no, Ryan, I couldn't agree with you more. For me, and this is probably a bias with this exercise, but for me to sort of compare anybody to Jordan and LeBron and Kobe, it almost has to be a quarterback, just in terms of sort of the impact on the game. And so that's why right away, I kind of just discounted that, but I completely agree with you for all those points, and it makes complete sense. When you actually think historically, though, in terms of Aaron Donald, what's the first word that comes to mind? It's dominance. And so when you think about dominance and we sort of go back to, previous players, you got to think Shaq or Wilt, that's, if I were to really sort of go true comp at its essence, it would either be Shaq or Wilt because of, just actually changing the geometry of the game, the way you actually have to think about double teams and true dominance. Aaron Donald is that. So, I don't know if there's any higher praise for Aaron Donald than being compared to Shaq, Wilt, LeBron, and Giannis. Yeah. But it's all very appropriate and fair given he's the co-greatest defensive player in the history of the NFL.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, when you look at dominance, Wilt makes so much sense just because, they changed the game because of what Wilt Chamberlain did. Speaking of my guy Joker, just broke his triple-double record in one current playoffs, so that's always fun to see. Record, I was like 56 years withstanding or whatnot, so tip of the cap to old Joker. But all right, moving on down here. Fourth, so we got through the big three. Everyone knew we were gonna comp Stafford, Kupp, and Donald. So now what are we gonna do for these final two? Here's the drum roll. And we're going Tutu Atwell. Tutu Atwell here. A lot to prove this season. Is he or is he not an NFL player? We shall see. I'm really excited to see who you comp to Tutu.
So, Ryan, for me, Tutu, when you think about Tutu, you think about more of a role player who's going to be a spark plug, someone who's going to blow the top off the defense, but really provide energy and explosive plays to an offense that is focused on obviously shutting down the stars and the primary guys. And so when you think about it in those terms, I think about a current player who's maybe a sixth man off the bench who's going to come in and be an absolute spark plug and really kind of change the complexion of the game. And one of the guys that I think really fits that mold in a Tutu Atwell way is Jordan Clarkson, former Laker, who was with Utah, and just, how he was able to be and find a really nice role for himself as a sixth man off the bench. And I think their stories are similar where Clarkson started his NBA career with the Lakers. A lot of conversation. Is he a lead guard? Is he even a star in this league? Took him a while to kind of find himself and then slot into that sixth man role. And I think we're having a similar journey here with Tutu Atwell. Like, is he a top flight receiver? Is he a guy that, is he another manifestation of Tyreek Hill? Or is he going to be more of a package guy, wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4? I think it's going to be more the latter. And once he sort of really gets comfortable in that identity, I think it's really going to blow the top off of some defenses.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said it there best, just the comparison of what it is, how he's going to come into his own and be, what he truly can be, and will he be what he truly can be. And so I really went on a tangent on that of he has so much to prove this season. This is like a make or break season of will he not? Is he truly going to be not even a star, but just a reputable player in this game? And so when I looked at NBA players that are kind of in that same situation, I don't necessarily see the comp in terms of like playing style or even skill level, but in terms of what they have to prove. And so I went with Ben Simmons, a guy that came in the league.
Yeah.
First overall pick. Obviously, Tutu was a second rounder, but he was the Rams' first pick that year. So obviously a lot of pressure on him as the Rams, the highest pick they took him. And so Ben Simmons kind of came on the scene, played pretty well. I believe he's was a 3-time All-Star. And then he gets hurt, sits out. There's some questions there of does he have the mental, not stability, but mental strength fortitude to really get back from that injury. Tutu obviously got injured his rookie year, had to come back from injury and battle that and just fight for playing time as well. And so now going into this season for Tutu, it's like, hey, okay, what are you going to be? Same with Ben Simmons. Are you as good as we thought you were when you were the first overall pick? Are you even an NBA player anymore? Or is your career over? So I think in that regard, there's a lot of similarities to draw between the two just because of how much they have to prove in this next season.
I love that, Ryan. That's such a great comp there in terms of from the expectation and the story. Simmons, obviously, with a ton to prove. I think Tutu, I think it's more role there in terms of fit. Simmons, I think it's beyond the role. It's also just his approach, his professionalism, the mental fortitude that you talked about, all of those things. But I love the comp. I mean, it's urgency to the max. So it makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. So we'll see how both those guys do. Obviously, you never root against any human being. So I'm rooting for both of them, but obviously rooting a little harder for Tutu as he's our guy here in LA. So, all right, wrapping up our Rams comps to NBA players and our final player, Jamal, we went with Tyler Higbee, the long-standing tight end, one of the longest-standing players on this roster. When you look through it and just all the rookies there, he's one of the old vets now. And the stalwart at tight end and, going into kind of, I believe, a contract year. So he's got some stuff to put out there. So who are you comping Tyler Higbee to?
Ryan, I mean, Higbee, I love his game as a tight end, just a very necessary piece of an offensive puzzle that is the NFL. And also, I think I really enjoy Higbee's versatility. We've kind of seen that as well from time to time over the years. But when you think about a tight end, I think the comp for a tight end in the NBA is power forward center. And when you think about the things that the tight end has to do, they got to catch and they got to block, and they have to sort of, be sort of load balancing for an offense. In much the same way a center needs to not just score, but rebound and block shots and defend. And so there's a lot of similarities there. And for me, Higbee reminds me of another LA guy, Ivica Zubac, who's the center for the Clippers. Zubac obviously played with the Lakers. Now he's with the Clippers, but just a really important rotational piece in terms of defense, rebounding, stability that sort of complements and is a glue guy to the stars and allows you to really be successful, especially as you get deeper into the playoffs. And for me, Higbee is that stable piece. He's a glue guy. He allows you to sort of, roll out to certain sides of the field, play action, go strong side, weak side, and allow you to sort of make those deeper runs when everyone's kind of focused on the Kupps and Staffords and some of the gadget guys. Higbee's kind of that core rotational piece in much the way Ivica Zubac is.
Great comparison, and makes a ton of sense because I went center as well. I think that's a great comp for a tight end, center or power forward. When you look at Tyler Higbee, there's some great tight ends in the NFL. I wouldn't say it's a deep position in terms of the talent level drops off pretty severely. I think you can look at Tyler Higbee and say he's top 12. You could maybe even sneak him into the top 10 when you look at the 32 starting tight ends in the league. And so kind of looking at that, when you look at some of these centers that are so pivotal, that are just really solid players, I look at a guy that's had a very just strong career. He's never been the flashiest. He's probably, I would say, higher regarded in the NBA than what Tyler Higbee is. But I went with Brook Lopez, a guy
I had a feeling as you were describing that, Lopez was coming to mind.
Yeah. He's kind of, played around here and there. He's with Milwaukee now and just a very, very solid player. He averages 15 and 7 throughout his career, something like that. So just when you look at his career trajectory, it's a guy that you can rely on, count on. He's not going to light it up every single season, but he's not going to let you down. I think that's, to me, Tyler Higbee is just a reliable, true tight end that can block, can catch, can run routes, do what you need him to do. And so Brook Lopez, I think, makes sense in that comp there.
Love that comp, Ryan, for all the reasons that you mentioned. And Lopez was also a critical piece to a championship team in much the same way Higbee was. Yeah. So, when you think about the Bucs in 2021, obviously Giannis and Middleton and Drew Holiday get all the buzz, but Lopez had some critical moments there in much the way Higbee did over the course of the Rams playoff run when everyone, the entire focus was on Kupp and Stafford and Donald and Akers and what he would or wouldn't do and Van Jefferson, et cetera, and OBJ, of course. So love that comp and the professionalism to match with it.
Yeah, and the fear when he got injured that year was everything was going to fall apart. So I think it shows how important he actually was to that offense as that kind of either decoy or blocking or just another option for Stafford in that offense. So, well, that will do it for Rams comps NBA players. Let us know how we did. Let us know your thoughts at LAFB Jams, at Ryan Dyer LAFB, main account at LAFB Network, or you can text us, text RamsHouse, all one word, to the number 31032. Love to hear your thoughts. Hopefully everyone enjoyed it, and you can enjoy the rest of the NBA playoffs. Jamal, any signing off thoughts before we get out of here with our Rams fans?
This was a great conversation, Ryan, and I think that the comps were really sophisticated and great, and I'm just surprised that you didn't go 5 for 5 with the Denver Nuggets, considering where they are in the playoffs right now and really on the cusp of winning a championship. They should be favored against either Miami or Boston, whoever it is, and I fully expect them to bring home the rafter and the title. So I'm just grateful that you didn't go 5 for 5 with the Nuggets. So, but this was a great conversation.
Had to keep it honest. Only went Joker to Kupp. But for my lack of NBA knowledge, I think we pulled it together and well done to you. So, but thank you all for tuning in. This is the LA Football Show. We'll be back next week. Rams fans, everyone enjoy the rest of your week and the weekend, and we'll talk to y'all next week.
You're listening to the LA Football Podcast.